Good afternoon. Please again to remind you, if you have cell phones on, please put them to vibrate or turn them off. I'm James Harris, and on behalf of the Special Programs Committee and the City Club of Cleveland, I would like to welcome you to this program. Today's program is all about the Cleveland Museum of Natural History's newest exhibit, SmartHome Cleveland. As many Greater Clevelanders are aware, the Cleveland Museum of Natural History has built and recently opened a two-story house looking out on Wade Oval. And this house, I understand, is so popular that people want to move into it already, and they've already put dibs on the master bedroom suite. The PNC Smart Home augments the museum's exhibition on climate change, so it's linked to that. And that runs from July 23rd through the end of the year. Now, SmartHome Cleveland was built to demonstrate how we can live more energy efficiently. Designed to conform to current best practices of energy performance, it doesn't even have a furnace, for example, and it's 90% more energy efficient than a typical home. It has no drafts, it has no cold spots, it has extremely low heating bills. I don't know if it comes with cleaning service, but it has just about everything else. The question is, how is this possible? Because this is a very smart idea. What makes it even smarter is that this house fits right in with the neighborhood where it will eventually be moved to. And that is on Wade Park Boulevard. And again, if you're interested, I believe the house is for sale. I don't know if Ernie Cahoon is in the audience or not, but he'll definitely take your bids. It also is a traditional home. I mean, this is no Jetson futuristic exercise. It's no house with folding walls out of the Forbidden Planet. It's nothing like that. It really fits into the neighborhood. It's a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, and a popular and easily recognized traditional style. In other words, the New Age bermed house, and some of you are familiar with those kind of houses, of the 70s and 80s has grown up. That makes this passive home, and by the way, one of the questions is what exactly is a passive home? Not just energy efficient, but marketable, and perhaps even affordable in the real world. And if this is the case, another question that this panel will probably discuss is, can Cleveland lead the way in passive home construction or the home industry? To discuss all this is the very smart team that designed and oversaw SmartHome Cleveland, and they're here for a panel discussion, very conversational, moderated by a change leader in innovative sustainability practices. And the panelists are Evalyn Gates, the Executive Director of the Cleveland Museum of Natural History, Chuck Miller, designer and architect of the house from Doty Miller, and Mark Hoberecht, certified passive home expert and a consultant who has worked with these kinds of houses and is the principal of Harvest Build Associates. Leading the discussion on the far end is Holly Harlan, who's the founder and former director of Entrepreneurs for Sustainability. And Holly has been involved with these kinds of issues for years, as many of you know, and we're very pleased to have her moderate this. So with no more ado, we'll begin the program, and Holly, it's yours.
Jim. Thanks so much for inviting us to share more about the Smart Home, the PNC Smart Home. Before we get started, I always like to know a little bit about the audience. So just a quick show of hands, how many people here have already gone through a tour of the Smart Home? Just so we can get a feel for that. So that looks like maybe a quarter of the people here for the radio audience on that. So the first question for the panel is, what were your roles in this project, and why did you really want to be involved? Evalyn, would you get us started?
I'd love to. Thank you, Holly. The museum is an educational institution, and our role in the community is to provide the science behind ideas, to inspire people to think about the natural world and how we fit into the natural world. And we also have real things. So we have real dinosaur bones, and seeing is believing. So we wanted to take this opportunity to show people what the future is going to look like. And when you walk into a real house, it makes a very different impression than just reading about it. So the role was to have an exhibit that would inspire, educate, and really, astound people with the fact that the future is going to be wonderful.
Seeing is believing. How about you, Chuck? What was your role?
Well, first I'd like to just acknowledge that this is a really, really unique opportunity that we got here from the Natural History Museum to do a real-world demonstration of something that's has been theoretical a lot, talked about over the years, has been done thousands of times in Europe, but not so many times here in the United States. And so the role I had was to bring all of the concepts and desires for this project as a demonstration house together into something that could be actually built and then actually moved to another site at the end of the exhibit season and move it in October to its permanent site. And to try to figure out the logistics of how we do that in a short time period, how we do that in a way that it's going to be durable, and we really had a goal to, without exaggeration, make this a house that'll last 300 years. So all in all, we had to try to do a lot of things in a short period of time. But we had a terrific team, and I just was able to pull that together in terms of bringing all those parties together in a collaborative way to come up with a design that worked.
That's great. And Mark, your role?
Well, excuse me, my role was the certified passive house consultant for the project. So I was mostly working with the architect and the general contractor and in advising them on how this smart home could meet the passive house standards, which have energy reduction of about 90%, total energy reduction, including the electricity and all utilities, of about 80%. And so it was a balancing act of standard construction processes and materials and trying to come up with the best compromise to get to the standards and still make everybody else happy.
So for those of us that haven't gone through the house, you're going to go through the house. What are we going to like most about it? Some of the things we're going to see, seeing is believing, and some of the things we might not see that's behind the scenes. So what are we going to like most about this house when we tour it? I don't know, Mark, you want to start?
Well, from a technical standpoint, I think the biggest thing people will notice is the windows are from Europe. They're German windows, so they're extremely durable. They have triple seals. They tilt and turn, which is standard procedure in Europe for windows. Another key technological aspect is what's called the energy recovery ventilator, which supplies a constant fresh air stream to the house, but very quietly. That's what makes this product different. It's also from Germany, but it's much quieter than any energy recovery ventilator you can get in North America. And because these walls in this house are so thick, that's one thing. If you tour the house, you'll notice it's extremely quiet inside. And with a house that is extremely quiet, you don't want to hear fan noise, you don't want to hear a furnace coming on or shutting off. You want everything to be as quiet as possible, and I think you'll definitely notice that in this house.
It's one of the things I hear most from people walk into this. First of all, is wow when they do hit that master bedroom that Jim mentioned earlier, and it's wonderful because it's got a lot of different access points. So if you come in, you might be stunned by the beauty of the house and the artwork. You might be amazed by the quiet, and that is really impressive. You might be most interested in the behind the scenes, the guts of the house, or the appliances, or the things that you might carry away to your own home without building a completely new house, just ideas that people come in. But I think the biggest thing is people walk in and think, I'd like to live here. I could live here. It's a house that strikes you as something very real and very inviting, not what you expect. And that element of surprise is wonderful in an exhibit.
I think one of the things that it really strikes a lot of people is the fact that given the idea that we wanted to make this a house that would last for many generations, we wanted to make it a very open plan so that it's very flexible. Anybody can live in this house and arrange it in different ways as they want to, as they age, if they have a family. There's a lot of different things they can do to make this house work for generations from now. So I think one of the things people notice is it's not chopped up into a lot of little rooms. and you do go into the major spaces and you'll see the large windows, the oversized windows, while they do perform a function, is really in effect the furnace for the house in the wintertime, those large windows bringing in the solar energy. They're really a dramatic view to the outside too. Especially dramatic now because we're at Wade Oval where we are. Everybody would like to live right there.
So what does the passive home standard mean, and how is it possible that you could build a house that doesn't have a furnace at all?
What it means is that excuse me, the heating cooling energy will be about 10% of what a typical house would be, and you accomplish that using three major factors, and one is use super insulation in the walls. Our walls are about a foot thick and an R value of about 50. You also use ultra high performance windows. I mentioned earlier our windows came from Germany. They're triple glazed. They have a very high solar heat gain coefficient, so they let a lot of solar energy in, yet they have all the appropriate low E coatings so that that warm energy doesn't then leave back out through the windows. And the other key feature is that the house is extremely airtight. It's needs to be at least 0.6 air changes per hour or less, and in a typical house is probably 2 to 5 air changes per hour. And you'll hear a lot of building people make comments that, well, that much insulation is too much, it's a law of diminishing returns, and that's true if you have average windows and average air tightness. But the combination of doing all those three things in unison is what allows you to bring that energy usage down to 10% of a typical house, and at that level of energy usage, which is basically 2 hair dryers, you don't need a furnace anymore. You can get away with much smaller, essentially backup type heating cooling systems.
Chuck, do you want to add anything more?
Well, the only thing I can really add to that is the fact that I've been amazed at really, to a large degree, outside of the high performance windows that are made to very high standards in Europe, and the ventilation system and the Mitsubishi heat pumps. Everything else is really nothing more than attention to detail. It's trying to get as much wood out of the exterior walls, which create a thermal bridge and carry heat to the outside in the wintertime. And the fact that the carpenters and craftsmen that worked on this house from CPK that built this are cabinet maker type guys, and they knew that the detailing was going to really pull everything together, and they really embraced the whole idea of taping every joint, sealing every edge, and making sure that we really had the minimal amount of loss through the outside wall. We're very used to the idea of insulating buildings very well. We're not all that used to the idea of sealing buildings very well. And so that whole new concept is something that a lot of us working on the job didn't realize the impact that had until Mark showed us what had gone on in the houses that were developed in Europe. And it's a dramatic difference.
Now, did you have to have special training for the folks that did the building then to learn new techniques? Or
well, we had to plan a lot. We had to have a lot of discussion. We probably have in our electronic database, we probably have 10 or 12 different cross sections of the wall construction, all analyzing how many layers of materials we need to put together, how will that work. We went to the extent of creating a mock-up wall so we could understand exactly how the windows should be set in the wall. We knew the goal was to set the windows in the center of the wall. We know that from past experience with building passive houses. But exactly how do you detail and tape those edges and seal those joints? And building the mock-up was great because we made some adjustments in our thinking and realized what was going to be hard and what was going to be easy. So it was a lot of that preparation before we really hit the ground and started the real construction 2 months ago. We really spent several months in the field trying to work out how we were going to make these things work once we got to starting construction.
This is a lot to learn to build a passive home.
There's a lot. Yeah.
There's a lot to learn. So is there really an opportunity in Northeast Ohio for these homes? Does it fit into what the future holds for Northeast Ohio?
Well, I think anytime you're going to design a house that's going to perform the way this is going to perform, it's going to be attractive. Everybody's going to be always interested in any product that is a higher performance product of some kind. And that's exactly what this is. I mean, when we've been doing LEED buildings over the years, I don't know that there's a real definitive study on how much energy you save in all these LEED buildings that we do. But anecdotally, I hear things like 30% savings and so forth on heating and air conditioning bills. With this one being at the 85, 90% savings, it's gonna startle a lot of people, and I think that's going to have a dramatic impact on people's thinking about how can I get to that as a standard in this part of the country.
How about the rest of you? You have input on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of this story is the amounts of creativity and expertise that came together over those months. I mean, really, these guys did an amazing job of learning how to do this, so that they've brought this new expertise and this ability to do this here to Northeast Ohio, and can now serve as resources for a whole host of different building projects. And it's something where, you know, you have to design a passive house to fit a certain location in the country and also a particular site. And so you really do need local experts that understand and can look at what our climate is like, which, as beautiful as it is today, has some challenges in the winter, and even in the summer, and then figure out how to do this. So this is, you know, I sort of looked at this when they started this as this challenge of not just can you build it, but can you design it? Can you sort of learn everything that we need? And they've done just an outstanding job.
Where else have they built these homes, and how are they getting these homes into the mass market? Mark, do you have some experience with that?
Well, these homes are all throughout Europe. There's over 25,000 passive homes in Europe right now. And in fact, the European Union has made it law that starting in 2016, all new houses in member countries of the European Union have to be passive houses. So they're taking it very seriously over in Europe. Here in the U.S., there's a certified passive house in Minnesota. There's even one in Fairbanks, Alaska. So even though our climate is challenging, those climates are even more challenging.
And then I understand that this technology can be used for other than homes.
Right. Any building can be built to passive house standards. In Europe, there's schools, factories, grocery stores. I think the schools part is the most impressive because they're, these high-tech energy recovery ventilators, they do studies on the amount of CO2 that build up in rooms, and they find that it's excessive, especially in classrooms, and it definitely affects the ability of children to pay attention and to learn. And the passive house schools in Europe are just raved about how much they've noticed an improvement in students' performance.
And I'd just like to add, we built this house as an exhibit, so it's there to inspire and be beautiful and something you can tour, but the potential is there to also build more affordable housing using these techniques. And the more we build, the more we can get the cost down. But it also then, once you have a family in this home, it's much more affordable to live in it because you don't have the utility bills. So it's something I think, as a country we need to start looking at for all kinds of buildings.
Let's talk about cost. I mean, how much more expensive is it to build than an average home in Cleveland? And there's not an average home, but Chuck, can you talk to that?
Well, we've tried to extract the numbers from this house as an experience, and it's a little hard because in some cases we paid a premium for materials from Europe, and in some cases we got some contributions on some materials from manufacturers. So it's a little bit skewed, but as we try to extrapolate that and put it down in real world numbers, it looks like the cost is about 20% over standard construction cost. Which is a premium, but is really a bargain when you think about it in terms of its long term. I think of it as a little bit like when people first came out with Prius and hybrid cars. There was a premium to be paid, and everybody tried to do the calculation: is that going to be offset by the gas that I save and so forth? But the real difference came when it came to turn your car in or resell it. The value was very high. And so that's what happens when we look at these houses, that we believe that the projection will be as you go 20, 30, 40 years in the future, which is how you have to think of anything we build, and we're thinking beyond that. To hold that value over what is being built today is a for sure thing with these kinds of houses.
One of you gave the example of the air conditioner. Do you want to, I don't remember who it was during a recent conversation that we have, that the air conditioner at one time was something that was nice to have, but now we expect
Right.
it.
We keep hearing the question that comes up about what is the payback on my investment? I mean, it's not like just putting a window in or doing something like that. You're talking about a whole quality of life issue that people make judgment calls about, and they say, I remember when I was growing up as a kid, every once in a while you'd see a car that had air conditioning, or you'd see a home that had air conditioning. At one point in time, that became a necessity, not a luxury. I think this whole quality of life issue becomes something that we need to strongly consider in terms of our homes especially. We know that that's going to be the case. People don't go out and buy the cheapest house they can buy. They're not just looking to put a roof over their head, they're looking to buy something that really represents how they want to live. And I believe that's what this is taking us to the next level.
Do one of you have something to say around the economic development, the jobs potential, new products perhaps, Mark, that we can bring from Germany and manufacture here? Is there economic benefits?
For some of these products, there definitely is, but there needs to be a large enough market to drive the investment to start building those. When we got these windows from Germany, they're distributed by a company in Wisconsin called H Window. And they manufacture a line of their own windows, so they have some of the same manufacturing equipment. And they told us that when the demand gets to be at least 20 houses a year, that they would make the investment to bring over the rest of the equipment to then make those windows here. And I think that will probably happen here shortly because they're getting a lot of demand for windows because they are such a superior product to anything you can get here in North America.
We talked a little bit about retrofits, and that's where, you know, a lot of our homes right now, are there aspects of this home, maybe we're not in the market to buy a new home, but there's aspects of the home we can bring into our own?
Yeah, and everything from all of the appliances, which are Energy Star appliances, to the water fixtures, the faucets, which all have WaterSense, which is like Energy Star for faucets. All of these things, you can find out more about them and find out exactly where you can buy them when you tour the home. And to be honest, when you go in, even personally, and sort of feel that house. I walked into the house that Tuesday. It was like 95 degrees outside, and it was the first time I'd stepped in for a while. And I came in the door, and it was the most incredibly comfortable environment in which to be. It was not humid. It was cool. It was perfect. And it makes me stop and think, okay, I need to go home and really look at the insulation again. So there are things that you can do and think about the next time we need to upgrade a system, maybe looking at one of the heat pumps that's in there. So there are a million different ideas, I think, that you can get.
Chuck or Mark?
Well, I've been looking a lot at how we can deal with this, with the built-out housing market that we've got. We've got, of course, thousands and thousands of homes in Cleveland that are not going to be knocked down and replaced with passive houses overnight. And so we're going to be probably living with most of the houses in our neighborhoods 50 years from now will likely be houses that are built today. So how are we going to deal with that in terms of keeping them affordable and so forth? So we're going to have to deal with a couple of ways. What we really do in a passive house is we drive the energy loss down to the bare minimum that we can do, and that'll continue to evolve as new products come online and so forth. The other aspect of it that we have to tie it to when we're dealing with an existing housing stock is to try to figure out, if we can't get down to the tight numbers that we can get in a new home, if we can take it down to 50% of what we normally use, maybe we can couple that with things like clean energy and renewable energy and done on a community-wide basis to try to wean ourselves off of some of the carbon footprint that we've got. So I think when we get to an existing housing stock, we've got to start looking beyond the house itself and start looking at other infrastructure things to help us meet changes in energy demand as that goes on.
Now, Chuck and Mark, you guys have partnered on another innovative design in Cleveland Heights, a straw bale home, and so you two are on the forefront of building these homes. But how do we get the rest of the building market in and starting to build more of these? What has to happen out there? I
think we just need to get more builders out there building these things, and I think that we are reaching a point where that is very interesting. But, you know, we've got a very tough housing market these days in order to sell these things, and that's one of the things we wanted to talk about, I know, today, and how do we deal with that challenge? And I think the challenge is that if you're a builder, how are you going to do something different that's going to attract somebody to your product? And I think this is the one that is, this type of construction is something that is going to differentiate a builder these days. It's going to set them apart in the marketplace. It's going to show added value. I mean, people need to understand, while we have a difficult housing market, it's not right to say that houses are not selling. I know that if you go out and you talk to real estate people, you're going to find that there are houses selling. And which are the ones that are selling? The ones that they believe are holding value. That people are not afraid to buy into if they need to get rid of it in 10 years or so. What's going to be something that I'm going to get some residual value out of? I think the passive house concept is all about that.
And we can use the house as a demonstration for builders. And I know you've already been bringing through other builders to show them the techniques. So it's not just for homeowners, but also for the building trades to use this exhibit in the way that we use other exhibits as a real-life demonstration.
Evalyn, how does the smart home address climate change?
Basically, it's showing us a way towards the future. This really is the home of the future, the fact that you can see it and understand in a very visceral way that saving energy doesn't mean being uncomfortable. And in fact, it is extremely comfortable and very healthy. And one of the things we need to do is take this discussion about climate change and think about how do we move forward. You know, let's look at possible solutions, and this demonstrates that very clearly.
So what are your hopes for the passive house in the region? I mean, in your wildest dreams, you know, 10, 15, 20 years from now, what might this smart house, this smart home, what might have spurred on, what might have catalyzed?
I think it'd be great if the city of Cleveland did what the European Union did and picked some time frame, say 2019, because of the sustainability initiatives that are going on here, and say, by this year, we're going to make sure every new house that's built in Cleveland is a passive house.
So a big goal.
Right.
Set a big goal.
You know, my goal is more in line probably with the museums, and that's to get young people through here, and people are thinking about how they're going to live in the future with their families, and seeing this as an opportunity for creativity, for taking this even to the next level, and really building on that, because that's what science education is about.
And I see it as an opportunity for us to have a whole new line of industry that could grow up in this area. Mm-hmm. I mean, the fact that we had to go to Europe to buy these windows is really bad. I think it would be great if we could make this a real regionally based type of model that we could pick up from 200 to 300 miles around the Cleveland area to vibrant industries that are providing products and materials that'll serve a market like this.
So where does our audience go to learn more? Other than, of course, we want everybody to tour the house. What are some other resources where they can learn more about the passive house and different technologies, either for their own home or for their small business, or maybe somebody wants to champion the first school, that's the passive school in Cleveland out there?
I mean, the place to start would be the museum's website, cmnh.org, and from there you can link to Green City Blue Lake, which is our sustainability institute, and there are many, many links on there to things about passive houses, alternative energy, and also everything that you find in the home will be online so that you can then go and look for yourself where you might get some of these.
And I think you ought to call Mark, and I think you ought to call me.
Good. So we need to call Doty and Miller, architects, and we need to call Mark Hoberecht at Harvest Build to learn more about how to, because it's not each house has to be designed differently for the site, isn't that correct?
Yeah, each site is, or each house is site specific, it's climate specific, so what works here in Cleveland doesn't necessarily work in Boston or Baltimore or places like that. It's very site specific.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we're listening to a special program featuring a panel discussion with Dr. Evalyn Gates, Executive Director of the Cleveland Museum of Natural History, Mark Hoberecht, Certified Passive Home Consultant, and Chuck Miller, Designer and Architect, Doty and Miller Architects, moderated by Holly Harlan, former Executive Director, Entrepreneurs for Sustainability. Today we would like to return to our speakers for a traditional City Club question and answer period. As I mentioned before, we welcome questions from everyone, including guests. We have two members of the Special Programs Committee helping out by holding microphones, and that's Patty Quinones and Doreen Lazarus. And if you have a question, please let them know, raise your hand, and we are now ready to begin with our first question.
I'm wondering, you mentioned that you have a air change system in the home. How are you dealing with humidity in the home?
Would you like to start with that?
Sure. The energy recovery ventilator does allow some moisture transfer, so the humidity is controlled partly through that, but mostly it's controlled by the heating and cooling system that we have. It's a very small air source heat pump system, so it can operate in either heating mode or cooling mode. So when it's in cooling mode, it does dehumidification as well.
Chuck, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think Mark's got it. It really is handled through that ventilation system. That really seems to do the job, and we've been very comfortable on days that we've had humidity in there, and it's worked really great.
I have a question for Evalyn. I know all about the house because that's my partner, Chuck Miller, there. But Evalyn, I'd like to know about the actual climate change exhibit, when it's coming and how big it is and where it's been, that kind of a thing.
Oh, thank you for the question. The climate change exhibit is coming from the American Museum of Natural History, and it was developed in partnership with the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. So David Beach, our Director of Sustainability, was part of developing and creating the exhibit, as were several other institutions around the globe, actually. So it's an international exhibit, and it's toured in New York City, Mexico City, Chicago, I think St. Louis most recently. So it's been around, and we're doing some fun things with it too to give it a little local flavor, because one of the things I didn't have a chance to mention before that I really do want to get out, what I think the most wonderful stories of this has been the way the community of Northeast Ohio has come together to support the project, to bring their ideas, their expertise, their funding, their products. So it's come from so many different directions and really made this a community. And we want to do the same thing with the exhibit. I think people in this region should know about and be very proud of everything that's going on in terms of new energy technologies, sustainability efforts, new products that are being developed here, projects that are happening here, and we're going to try to enhance the exhibit itself with some of our own ideas.
The house has rain catchers, so can you tell me a little bit about those and if those can be used on existing housing, and what purposes would you use that for?
What you see at the exhibit is really a cistern system. Now, if you go to there's really two sides to it. One side of the roof, all of the rain is caught and gathered into a large water cistern that normally would be put underground, but it's such a great, huge 500-gallon vessel that we think is so attractive. We have it actually installed above ground, but that will actually be able to carry 500 gallons of water that will be able to irrigate the land and the flowers and all those things around. The other side of the roof all goes to a natural rain garden. That being that it's all collected into a little pool that's kind of a decorative feature on one side of the house that goes down a little decorative rain chain by the front door and travels down the ground into a gravel bed and eventually makes its way to a place on the site that will allow collection in a small little pond that will eventually percolate right into the ground. So none of the rainwater that hits this house this summer will ever get into the stormwater system. It's all captured on site.
And I should say too, the rain chain on one side, it's actually beautiful. It hangs from the side of the house, and everyone asks what it is when they go there. And I happened to be there one of the days when it was pouring rain, and it's beautiful. The rain just sort of trickles down among, and that you can get for your own house. So it's a neat visual.
No, I would want to follow on question to that. I mean, do any of you know what's going on with the Northeast Ohio Sewer District and how they're really trying to help all of the homes keep more of the water right on their sites, and how this is important to Northeast Ohio and our infrastructure issues here?
Well, they were actually a participant in helping us do this design on the site, and so they've been a strong advocate of things like rain gardens and so forth. If you go to their website, they will actually give you instructions on how you can actually do that as a homeowner or a property owner too.
We're also partnering this summer with Home Depot, who every Wednesday evening during Wade Oval Wednesdays are going to be putting on workshops in the lobby. And one of them that's coming up later this month or early July is about rain gardens. And there are also things about insulation or other gardening techniques, so using the house that way.
And Northeast Ohio has a combined sewer. And right now, when we have rain events, all the water rushes into the lake, and some of the water contains waste, and we don't like that on our beaches. So the more of it we can keep on our properties, the less that we're going to have running out into the lake during those rain events. So it's really important for two reasons. One, for your home, but also for the region.
Hi, I had a chance to look at the home. I thought it was really great over the weekend. But for those who might not be building a new home, I wonder if you can talk about some of the simple lessons that we might be able to learn in terms of applying. Like, for instance, you mentioned Energy Star appliances. I mean, how much sort of energy savings might we be able to expect if we just take simple steps like that?
I don't have the numbers on the tip of my tongue, but I know just with the lighting, for example, we're using a lot of LED lights in this house, and I don't know what the final numbers were, Chuck, but I think it was under a kilowatt for all of the lighting in the entire house. So, that's less than 10 standard 100-watt light bulbs.
And one of the products that we have, actually talking about the LEDs, it's a real simple thing. There's a light retrofit kit that you can do. All of us work in offices, and in some of our houses have these recessed downlights in our ceilings with the regular incandescent bulbs in them. There's a product out there that we used in this house that you screw that light bulb out and you screw this alternate head in, and it's an LED, and it's going to last 10 years, and it's going to use a whole lot less energy, about 1/10 of the energy of a fluorescent bulb even, so it's about 100th of the amount of an incandescent bulb being used by the LED. So there's a dramatic change in things that you can buy. There's a lot of products out there that they're actually everywhere. If you go to Home Depot, we talk about Home Depot a lot, they really have a lot of products now that are retrofits. So you don't have to throw your old light fixtures away, and a lot of things that are like that are going to make us able to adapt to a new energy model out there now.
The home has many fascinating features, but for me, perhaps the most striking was the windows. Can you talk about how expensive those windows are, and what is the local alternative, since everyone isn't obviously going to be able to order from Germany and get those kinds of windows?
Well, price would be the only reason you couldn't order them from Germany, because really anyone can get them from Germany. They're about $100 a square foot, so they're at least double the price of a really high quality window here in the States, but the performance is just exceptional. The whole basis of the Passive House standard with windows is not just energy usage, it's also comfort. And these windows are designed so that when the temperature in the room is 70 degrees, that even on the coldest day, the surface temperature of the inside pane of glass is 67 degrees. So when it's 67 degrees, you don't get cold washing down the window and you don't get drafts. And it's that theory, that comfort that drives the window design that makes that performance as good as it is.
If you're going to address windows in the country right now, if you're not going to buy these European windows, which are really not available, we talked about the H window company that we imported through in Wisconsin. They do make a window of their own type, which is really interesting because it's a pivot type window, and they're finding their most success in school buildings actually, because they've sold to some elementary schools, and while they paid about a 20% premium for those windows in those schools, the school districts called them back and said, we've got to put more of these in because the cost savings far exceeded what we spent for a premium on those windows. So I think that's going to be one thing, but there are not a lot of manufacturers out there. We want to see Anderson and Pella and the rest of those come up and try to do something a little bit better than what they've got on the market. I can't believe they're not looking at it right now in order to do it. But the important thing now in your own home actually probably would be to put good storm panels on your windows that really aren't the leaky loose kind, that make them really nice and tight. Seal around the edges of your windows, because I know that when people do infrared studies on checking out how your house is performing, they will actually find more air and energy lost through the perimeter of your windows than through the middle of your windows. So it's a matter of sealing and caulking. So that's just another lesson to be learned on where we have the weak spots in our existing housing.
I just want to put an exclamation point around that last idea, that sometimes all you need is you don't need a new window, you need a caulking gun. And you need to caulk around the windows and really seal them. I can't tell you the number of stories I've heard that it's really a lot cheaper than buying new windows in some instances. So, you know, have a good energy home audit and find out where the leakage is before you make big investments, I think, in windows.
And that's all right. And having said that, we do need to make sure that we have these alternative products available when we do new construction now, because we do need the higher performance windows as an option at an affordable price.
I was wondering if the panel could talk a little bit about the permanent site and what makes the lawn a low-mow lawn, and whether there's a minimum size that makes installing solar panels on the garage cost-effective. So
who wants to answer the question on the lawn first?
Well, I'm getting out a little bit of my expertise, because Knight and Stoller were our landscape architects, and they did a great job in working up the specifics for what the lawn will be. So I'm not going to be able to tell you all the species about that, but it is more durable, drought tolerant, and slower growing. Those are the species that they put a blend together for that. You talked about the solar panel. The interesting thing now about solar panels, and this is really a changing part of the industry. We will require about 4 kilowatts of energy for this house. A 4 kilowatt array is not that big. Now I'm going to reach out a little bit. I'm going to guess it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 by 15 or 20 by 20. It's not a very big solar array. And that has changed a lot over the last 10 years. What's happened is, two things have happened. The solar panels have gotten a lot more efficient, and they've gotten a lot less expensive. So the point at which those become a real viable option is really here now, and it's really amazing that in Northern Ohio, it's a working product that really will serve you well. We put solar panels on our building our office building about 8 or 9 years ago. The performance of the new solar panels and the cost is way down from what it was in those days. So that's going to start to come together. But what we can achieve in this house by putting solar panels on the roof of the garage at the permanent site is that if we've got a 4 kilowatt array and we use 4 kilowatts of power in the house, we essentially are working with no energy bill net out at the end of the year. I mean, we will be paying for energy in certain times when the sun is not shining, but other times when it is, we will have a net metering agreement, and we'll be able to push energy back into the grid. So it will balance out at the end of the year that you will have really used no energy from the grid.
The energy savings, I think, are just an incredible element of this, but would you talk about the other part of it, the sustainable element of the project, the flooring, the stuff that we got from A Piece of Cleveland, and the artwork and some of the other elements?
Well, it's a big story to tell. I mean, there's so many things to explain about that. We were able to work with A Piece of Cleveland. If you're not familiar, they salvage a lot of the demolished materials from buildings and houses in Cuyahoga County. Couple of interesting things we were able to get from them. There was a house that was demolished, deconstructed in Cleveland Heights, a 1910 house, and the oak floors from that house had been finished one time in its life, the original time only. They had a finish on them. We retrieved those through A Piece of Cleveland, and actually those came from Habitat for Humanity. We worked with them too. So we were able to get that wood into this house and sand it one time, beautiful white oak, and it's a completely durable product, something that will be there for generations and generations. The artwork is sustainable art throughout the building. We've got artwork by local artists using pieces of wood and fabric and things like that are all made from sustainable materials and products. It's a great representation of the people in the Cleveland area that do environmental related art. It's just an enhancement that I didn't expect we were going to be able to pull off with such stunning results. When you come into this house, that's going to be the first thing that's going to strike you is the touch the artisans have put on this house that's completely compatible with the character of the house itself.
And I'd also like to talk about the entire house in terms of sustainability. Museums often construct exhibits, they're on display for a certain amount of time and then they go away. And this exhibit is actually sort of the ultimate sustainable exhibit because the entire house itself is going to be moved. So we are sort of 100% repurposed into a home that we hope people will be enjoying for, hundreds of years.
That's great. I know one of my favorite artists played a big part, Susie Fraser-Mueller, and she just has beautiful work, and she's been helping the art community grow in Northeast Ohio for some years, so I'm glad she was able to play a part in that.
Mm-hmm.
Considering, the question I have is about energy in the energy companies, and considering that they're raising our rates, how do they view this type of home, considering that it's an 80 to 90% reduction in usage?
I don't know, Mark, you want to try that one first, and then maybe?
I would hope they'd welcome it, but I'm not sure that I'm not sure that they would. I know one of the most frustrating things for me is that in my house I have natural gas, and in the summertime you use virtually no natural gas, yet your bill, $20 of it is just the access fee, and that's frustrating.
I mean, I think just in general, I haven't heard any specific feedback from the companies, but everyone in the country and everyone in this region knows that we need to work to become more energy efficient, and I think these companies too are full of our neighbors and friends who also want to see us move in that direction. So I think overall it's good in general.
I think it's inevitable that we work out something with the power companies. I mean, I think what's really going to happen is the most likely scenario is that buildings that we're building in the future are going to be more and more all electric, because electric is the most transferable type of power that you can have, and you can use a variety of sources, whether it be PV panels or wind or coal-fired plants or whatever it's going to be. It all can be transferred into electricity, and then that can be taken into people's homes and running equipment and lights and everything else that we've got. So that's going to be important that we end up with a true development of a smart grid out there somehow or another, coupled with our smart homes, so that power can be adjusted and transferred from high peak regions to low peak regions. Actually, parts of the country when it's at night that don't need a lot of power, we can steal some power or borrow some power from that part of the country and bring it to here. And so as the Earth rotates, there's power demands that kind of fluctuate around the world, and so those things are going to be something that are going to have to be all interconnected somehow or another in the future. It's just inevitable because it's going to be too costly to do it any other way.
And I would imagine, I don't know, David, you probably have the numbers of the amount of coal plants that provide our energy. Is that 80% or higher that are from coal burning plants in Ohio? About 70%. So as more of the country focuses on climate change, and they know that in Ohio most of our energy is produced by coal plants that are going to be coming under scrutiny, and so anything to reduce the demand on the old coal plants in particular, I think, will be looked upon positively, if not today, hopefully in the future. So this is really something that will help support our work in climate change.
You mentioned that the costs to build a passive home are about 20% higher than using traditional building methods, and yet the annual energy savings are substantial. Do you have any sense, is the payback period 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? A homeowner could borrow additional money. There are banks that lend money to increase a family's mortgage, so they can borrow those funds to cover the upfront costs.
Well, that's going to be the challenge. Again, the phrase you use about payback period is a little bit of a difficult thing to pin down, because you're going to be paying a flat cost for the house in terms of a mortgage payment, but we know that energy cost is going to go up and up and up. So payback periods could look like 25 years now, and could look like in 5 years from now it could be 15 years. So that's going to constantly come down. We know that that's probably an expectation that it's going to come down. The other side is we think that the banking industry should look at the fact that this home is so much more affordable. Somebody they're loaning house loan on for a house like this knows that this person is going to have a better ability to pay for the house, pay their mortgage, if they have reduced utility bills. And lastly, to talk about value, I think you need to think about a point I made before, is the fact that if you're going to invest in a house that is old technology versus a house that's new technology, what's the value of that house at the time when you want to sell it 15, 20 years from now? Will it be something that you're going to be able to easily resell or not? So I think that has to go into the equation. As Americans, we haven't had the European mentality of building with a long-term view in mind. I think that's going to start changing over the next few years.
What about other parts of the United States? Are they building passive homes, and are they finding, you know, the retain of value? I mean, do we have any other examples other than this one in Cleveland and in Europe?
Well, it's so new here in the States that, you know, there hasn't really been a resale market that's developed yet. But, you know, as Chuck mentioned, the premium is about 10 to 20% in this country. It's about 5 to 10% in Europe. And as more and more products are produced here in the States, you know, we'll get closer to that 5 to 10% range from the 10 to 20% we're at now.
So particularly those that are investing in a home that maybe they want to keep in the family, you're making this long-term investment then in your home, and it's something that you can pass down, this freedom from electric bills that you're passing down to future generations, or even small businesses for that matter, and schools and hospitals.
Right, that's exactly the mindset that Chuck mentioned in Europe. People they build quality because they're building for a long time, and they wouldn't think of, you know, using lower quality products in their house because they know they're going to be turning their house, you know, it's going to be turning over to the next generation.
Your figure that there were 25,000 passive homes in Europe and about 6 in the United States is really stunning. Do you have any sense of why Europe got so far out ahead of us on this, what the political forces were there, or perhaps the economic forces, and what do you see stirring in this country in terms of a political coalition to take a giant stride to catch up?
The driving force in Europe was both political and economic. They have higher energy prices, so that was one of the driving forces, and they just have a general mindset there that's more, I guess, environmentally friendly, for lack of a better way to describe it. You know, Germany has passed laws on solar energy where they've set a price for when you sell energy back to the grid, guaranteeing a price, so that spurred a lot of people buying solar panels in Europe because they knew they'd be guaranteed to get a certain price. So farmers, in some cases, found it was more cost-effective rather than to farm, just fill their fields with solar panels because they were going to be guaranteed a certain price selling it back to the grid. So that kind of mindset has set up all kinds of new companies in Europe to build these products. There's over 40 mom-and-pop window companies in Germany alone that make certified passive house windows. Each one of those windows better than anything you can buy here from Pella or Anderson or any place like that. And the designs are already sitting at these companies, these large companies. They're just waiting for the market to be there to start building the product. So I think it's going to take political, you know, regulation, just like with passing the Energy Star regulations on refrigerators, that they had to become much more energy efficient. All the manufacturers complained initially, but they've all followed suit. They've all developed tremendous products. If we do the same with, you know, energy requirements in housing, the same type of economic development would follow suit.
And I think the other side of that, to be honest, is the fact that the scientific basis for doing this has kind of been interrupted in this country by having the whole issue politicized. And that has really not occurred in Europe. The people on both sides of the political balance in Europe agree that they've got substantial environmental and energy issues to deal with. And that consensus has not really emerged in the United States, unfortunately. But it will. It just, out of necessity, it will.
And that's one of the things we're hoping an exhibit can do, which is present the science, present a solution, get discussion going. We need to start talking about this more in this country and increasing awareness that these topics, these solutions are out there, and doing it in a way that invite people to come in and take part in the discussion, make everyone feel comfortable. And an exhibit like this, we're hoping, will spur that kind of discussion.
Well, before we wrap up, I wanted to mention one or two things. And that is one of the questions that came up had to do with the utility companies and so on. And the illuminating, that is First Energy, does have a rebate program where they will do free haul away and this sort of thing, as well as give a rebate if you get an energy efficient appliance. So I want you to be aware of that. The second thing is that Dominion also has a very, very low cost home audit program. For I think it's something like $50 you can get a home audit. And that can save you hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So although they are in the business of selling energy or conveying energy, they also want to make sure it's good use of energy. So I just wanted to point that out. My question has to do again with the siting. Once it goes to Wade Park and all that, it's now going to have a basement. And right now it's on a slab. And we really haven't talked much about how it's going to be recited in terms of how it's going to face and what that basement does and so on. I wonder if you could go into that.
Well, the front of the house now, as you look at it on the exhibit, faces east. That will be the south face of the house on the permanent site. And that's where you see the large solar energy gathering windows facing on the south. We have about a balance of the equal amount of windows on the left and right side. Passive science indicates that that's the proper way to do it. We have windows looking out the back, but we've kind of minimized those because that's your greatest amount of heat loss out of the north side. The interesting thing about the new site with the basement is that we will be creating an insulated and air barrier perimeter around that house from the peak of the roof all the way down, which now on the exhibit site goes down to the first floor. When we go to the permanent site on Wade Park Avenue, it will actually go on the inside face of the basement walls and under the basement floor slab. So all of that envelope will be tightly sealed for air. It'll be tightly sealed for insulation. We will even be doing one other little thing. We'll be putting a little bit of solar or thermal air in the, Uponor heating pipes under the slab in the basement to act as sort of a little bit of a geothermal booster for our energy ventilation system so that that stays at a constant temperature all year round. It'll cool us in the summertime, it'll warm us in the wintertime just a little bit. That's free energy.
All right, this is the last question. And, I always want to say when we're done talking about it, what are we going to do? It's enough talk. What's the next action piece, right? So what can this audience do next? The audience that's here and the audience that may be listening to us. So each one of you, very quickly, we're running out of time. What would you suggest a next step for our audience?
I know I've probably said this before, but come and visit the house. You really just need to step inside and experience for yourself, because that's going to change your entire view of what a smart home is and what it can be, and give you the inspiration to go out and make those next steps. And bring your kids with you.
Change your lights, caulk your windows, insulate your walls, insulate your attic. Maybe even consider insulating the basement walls of your house, of the basement, because there's a lot of heat loss there. But those are real simple, easy to get to things.
Go online, look up Passive House, and I think what you'll find out is not only is there great energy savings, but these are the most comfortable, healthiest, and dust-free house you'll ever live in.
Right, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very, very interesting discussion. Very smart, too, I thought. Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we've been listening to a panel discussion featuring Dr. Evalyn Gates, Executive Director of the Cleveland Museum of Natural History, Mark Hoberecht, Certified Passive Home Consultant, and Chuck Miller, Designer, and architect Doty and Miller, Architects, moderated by Holly Harlan, former Executive Director for Entrepreneurs for Sustainability. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This program is now adjourned.